We live in a time where everybody wants to be a public figure. We live in a time where even people who have a private account spend their whole lives posting stuff and commenting on stuff to create an image and a projection of a reality that may bear no resemblance to the reality of their situation.
We know that engagement with social media and our cell phones releases a chemical called dopamine. That's why when you get a text, it feels good. So, you know, we've all had it where you're feeling a little bit down or feeling a bit lonely. And so you send out 10 texts to 10 friends, you know, hi, hi, hi. Because it feels good when you get a response. It's why we count the likes. It's why we go back 10 times to see if my Instagram is growing slower. Did I do something wrong? Do they not like me anymore, right? The trauma for young kids to be unfriended, right? Because we know when you get it, you get a hit of dopamine, which feels good. It's why we like it. It's why we keep going back to it. Dopamine is the exact same chemical that makes us feel good when we smoke, when we drink, and when we gamble. In other words, it's highly, highly addictive. We have age restrictions on smoking, gambling, and alcohol, and we have no age restrictions on social media and cell phones, which is the equivalent of opening up the liquor cabinet and saying to our teenagers, hey, by the way, this adolescence thing, if it gets you down, that's basically what's happening, right? That's basically what happened. You have an entire generation that has access to an addictive, numbing chemical called dopamine through social media and cell phones as they're going through the high stress of adolescence. Why is this important? Almost every alcoholic discovered alcohol when they were teenagers. When we're very, very young, the only approval we need is the approval of our parents. And as we go through adolescence, we make this transition where we now need the approval of our peers. Very frustrating for our parents, very important for us. It allows us to acculturate outside of our immediate families into the broader tribe. It's a highly, highly stressful and anxious period of our lives, and we're supposed to learn to rely on our friends.
Anytime you have unbelief in your heart, it will cause you to try to perform to prove something that you don't really believe. In psychological terms, it's called the fraudulence complex, or some call it the imposter syndrome. And it speaks about how many of us have an inability to internalize our strengths and our accomplishments. Psychologists call it the imposter syndrome because they say that many of us secretly, deep down, feel like we're a fraud. Many of us secretly, deep down, feel like we have so much less to offer than what people expect. And that even when people compliment us, we figure that the reason that they're complimenting us is because they don't really see us for who we are. And if they ever saw us for who we are, if they ever saw how stupid we feel, if they ever saw how inexperienced we feel, if they really saw how nervous we really feel, they would kick us out the room. It happens to fathers, it happens to leaders, it happens to teenagers. It is the fear of being found out to be less than they thought you were. It is the fear that keeps you in a performance mode. It is the fear that keeps you spending money to look like something important because deep down you're afraid that you're really not. It is the fear that keeps you overcompensating, and you get in situations, and rather than letting other people be the center of attention, you feel the need to overcompensate to show how intelligent you are, because deep down you don't feel intelligent enough. So people think you're cocky, but you're really not cocky. You're scared with the conflict between who they think you're supposed to be and who you feel like you really are. It means that sometimes, even as I'm trying to fulfill my purpose, I feel like a fake. It's not that I'm a hypocrite. It's not that I'm insincere. It's just that deep down inside, I'm a man who sometimes feels like a little boy. I want to be wise, but sometimes I feel like a fool. And I'm wondering, is there anybody here who lately has been up under the pressure of an expectation? And when you feel that, the temptation and the tendency is to prove it. I gotta prove I'm a good dad. I gotta prove it. And when you do it to prove it, it takes the joy out of it. And it's such a weird world we live in, isn't it? I mean, I'm so scared for my kids. Honestly, I don't even know what to tell them about growing up in a time where we've always had the pressure, but now the performance. Now everybody gets to experience performance anxiety because we all perform our lives for one another all the time, just constantly. I mean, if you cook a good meal for your family, it does not count unless you make an Instagram story out of the meal.
Some people, quite by accident, discover alcohol and the numbing effects of dopamine to help them cope with the stresses and anxieties of adolescence. Unfortunately, that becomes hardwired in their brains, and for the rest of their lives, when they suffer significant stress, they will not turn to a person, they will turn to the bottle. Social stress, financial stress, career stress, that's pretty much the primary reasons why an alcoholic drinks. What's happening is because we're allowing unfettered access to these dopamine-producing devices and media, basically it's becoming hardwired, and what we're seeing is as they grow older, too many kids don't know how to form deep, meaningful relationships. Their words, not mine. They will admit that many of their friendships are superficial. They will admit that they don't count on their friends, they don't rely on their friends, they have fun with their friends, but they also know that their friends will cancel on them if something better comes along. Deep, meaningful relationships are not there because they never practice the skill set, and worse, they don't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress. So when significant stress starts to show up in their lives, they're not turning to a person, they're turning to a device, they're turning to social media, they're turning to these things which offer temporary relief. We know, the science is clear, we know that people who spend more time on Facebook suffer higher rates of depression than people who spend less time on Facebook.
Because the truth of the matter is, some of you are hurting in ways that you don't have to hurt, because you are putting yourself in a position that you were not built to live in. Now, even Jesus... everybody. And he was sinless and spotless, and we expect that we can.
You're never going to keep everyone happy. Quit trying to please people. When you come to the end of your life, you are not going to stand before people and give an account. You're going to stand before God. He's not going to say, did you keep everyone happy? Did you please all your family? Did you have the support from your coworkers? He's going to ask, did you fulfill my purpose for your life?
And sometimes the pressure that we feel to be special does not come from God. It comes from culture, who tells you that you've got to be so special, so different, so unique, so set apart, but you already are. I mean, whoever you're trying to prove something to isn't paying attention, because they're trying to prove it to somebody who's not paying attention. And they're proving it to someone who's not paying attention. And so while we're busy posting to each other our results to prove to one another what we're worth, our purpose is dying in the place of our insecurity.
Alcohol is not bad. Too much alcohol is bad. Gambling is fun. Too much gambling is dangerous. There's nothing wrong with social media and cell phones. It's the imbalance, right? If you're sitting at dinner with your friends and you're texting somebody who's not there, that's a problem. That's an addiction. If you're sitting in a meeting with people you're supposed to be listening to and speaking, and you put your phone on the table, face up or face down, I don't care, that sends a subconscious message to the room that you're just not that important to me right now. That's what happens. And the fact that you cannot put it away is because you are addicted. Right? If you wake up and you check your phone before you say good morning to your girlfriend, boyfriend, or spouse, you have an addiction. And like all addiction, in time, it'll destroy relationships, it'll cost time, and it'll cost money, and it'll make your life worse.
Here's my advice to you today. Walk away from the 97%. Don't talk like they talk. Don't act like they act. Don't go where they go. Don't specialize in what they specialize in. Throw away the blame lists they cling to. Start you a new life. Here's the greatest value of discipline. Self-worth. Self-esteem. People are teaching self-esteem these days, but they don't connect it to disciplines. The least lack of discipline, and it starts to erode our psyche. Neglect starts as an infection, and if you don't take care of it, it becomes a disease. And one neglect leads to another. And the worst of all, when neglect starts, it diminishes our self-worth, our self-confidence, our self-value. You say, well, how can I get back my self-respect? All you have to do is start the smallest discipline that now corresponds to your own philosophy. Like I should, and I could, and I will.